And all right, I want to make a video simply because I don't make them enough like I should lately. And lately I'm starting to see some videos from some YouTubers that are basically addressing hardware gear, i.e. recording console, outboard gear, which is behind me. And there are a lot of let me say, first of all, if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark. Thank you for joining. Now there's what people are saying now. A small attribute of contributing to the channel by subscribing. It's a small click for people that are new, but it means a lot to the channel for people like myself. So with that being said, and of course the usual share, comment, thumbs up, and so forth. With all that being said, and I just want to put my thoughts on this. I basically want to comment on, there are a lot of people that are getting into home recording and recording and doing stuff that are getting into it now. A lot of the old school way, which would have been tape, recording consoles, and a lot of outboard gear, a lot of microphones, a lot of microphone preamps. At the time, the common music that was recorded most of the time was drums, bass guitar, organ, maybe a Wurlitzer, a Fender Rhodes, band instruments, and vocals. So that's how music was recorded. And as electronic and digital synthesizers came on board, especially 70s, 80s, and up to what we use today, including virtual instruments, have really changed what the tools, including the computers and stuff. So getting to the heart of what I want to say is, it's kind of like there are a lot of people that will tell you you don't need a console. They're going to tell you don't need outboard gear. You don't need a lot of stuff. You can do completely everything that you ever want to do in the box just using software and plugins. There are points where you can have a synthesizer or workstation and do everything within the workstation. The G6 can do it, the Phantom 6, the new one, the Core Cronus. A lot of boards can let you do everything, and you can make music just with that keyboard alone. Or you can use an MPC, like my MPC Renaissance right here. You can use that by itself along with the software and do full-fledged productions just right here, or like my MPC Studio. This alone, this one tool can do a full-fledged production. So what I'm saying for this video is, yes, I am not disagreeing with a lot of people that say you do not need one of these. You don't need all this outboard gear right behind me. These compressors and preamps and EQs and this console and all that. You don't need any of that. And I will be the first one to tell anyone this is absolutely correct. So with that being said, why even have it? And I'm going to simple it down to one reason: sonics. Every piece of gear in the analog domain or outboard gear or whatever creates sonics that you're trying to achieve if you're going that route. It's the only reason. I will give a few examples. If you go back and listen to classic records, I would say, let's say, we'll go back to, let's listen to, let's say one record. I'll say one record. Let's say Michael Jackson's Thriller album and the song Thriller. If you go back and listen to that now, that was done the old school way. Everything from the howling, the footsteps, and the horns, vocals, that was recorded through, well, they initially recorded some of the parts at Westlake, some of the parts were done at United, and some of ones done at East West. Strings, a lot of the percussion sounds, footsteps, Westlake. Some of the orchestra stuff was done at United. They had to use actual real orchestras, like real string, violin, viola, cello players. They had to actually use that because synthesizers couldn't produce at that time DX7s, DX21s, Yamahas, any type of analog synthesizer just didn't have that kind of digital sampling capability like they do today. Now you can get string sounds off any modern synthesizer. You don't have to hire an orchestra, but you had to then. So we're talking a lot of microphone preamps, a lot of large form consoles with built-in preamps and the consoles, a lot of microphones at the time to get it to sound dynamic like it did. Tape machines. So, and on top of that, the recording process, then it went to the mixing process, then it went to the mastering process. And what you're hearing is a mastered copy that was distributed for radio and CDs and cassettes. But when you listen to it, and you play it through a serious stereo system, you can hear how dynamic and warm and thick that song sounds. Drums aren't drum heavy like they are today with like drum machines with kick drums, snares, and stuff like that. Is not. Back then, the records, that's what required. The drums didn't have to have such speaker beating thumps to it like today. That started when hip hop really got really popular. But the drums were still extremely effective, even when they started recording that song in 1983. So why am I using that one song as an analogy to the purpose of outboard gear and, the rooms, high ceiling, the way, outboard gear, preamps, microphone? Why am I referring that? It's only necessary, and you'll hear a lot of people that will make the argument, even the studios that are still operating with the console, the only thing they really kind of replaced is a tape machine with an interface and like Pro Tools, a DAW, as an example. But majority of everything else that they're doing in those recording studios, even today in 2024, in a commercial building that charges for clients, charges clients to use those facilities and so forth, that where they still have a console, outboard gear, microphones, preamps, microphone stands, the whole traditional commercial studio setup, is because there are still artists that are recording music that kind of requires that. And most of that is bands, mostly bands or orchestras. It is not really super beneficial unless you're trying to achieve something sonically like I do. Even running stuff through channels and using my interface, running stuff through channels, running stuff through outboard gear, and still kind of recording that way, because I'm looking for that a type of sonic character that gives it that commercial sound, that was recorded that way. It's the only reason. But so a lot of y'all are probably asking, well, with plugins, software, virtual instruments, I don't think I need this. All I'm going to say is this. Most of the time, it's almost like, what's the best way I can describe? I'm going to try to use an analogy here. If you're used to driving in a newer modern car, almost every new modern car is either going to be, well, they're either hybrid, electric, or most cars are gasoline fed, but they're fuel injected. They have a computer. There's fuel injectors. They usually have all the common computer modules in it, such as ABS, traction control, body stabilization, remote. You get in there, the steering wheel, everything's fully loaded. The seats are powered. Tilt, cruise. You got some even have an information center, navigation, all built in one through the radio, navigation, modern stuff. And that's pretty standard for 90+% cars and trucks. Those are pretty standard. But if you were to jump in something like a classic, let's say, and I'll use this car. Let's say this car is a modern, let's say it's a Camaro. Still has a V8 motor, but it's got all the modern features to it. Versus if you was to jump in a classic 1972 Camaro, it can have a big block 454 in it. It's carbureted. There's no computer. When you get in it, there's no power seat. You have to manually roll the windows down. You get in it, everything's pretty much manually controlled. Even the dial to switch it from hot to cold, the switch to turn on the blower, the switch to turn on the air AC if it's equipped with it. Other than that, that's about as. Other than that, there's no navigation. There's none of that. It's just, and when you drive it, it feels like complete raw. Like you can smell the exhaust, the fumes from the exhaust pipe. It smells kind of rich, with the fuel rich. But when you drive it and you hit the gas, it just feels torquey. It feels like it wants to throw you in a seat. There's no ABS traction control, so it can fishtail and get out. If you're not careful, you're not a really good driver. You have to really tame that car. But it's a certain feel with a car. Let's say it makes 700 horsepower, big block 454, 700 horsepower, carbureted car. But when you drive it and you feel the raw power, it just makes you go, if you're into that. Because a lot of people aren't into that. Some people I'd rather have a V6 normal modern car that I can cruise in. Not everyone's into that kind of. But when you ride in something like that, it'll make your ears grin from ear to ear because you just, the car is just a beast. And that's what some people, they're going for that type of raw, carbureted big block power. And it's just like, man, this thing just is a beast. Okay. It's almost when you hear a lot of older engineers or people that prefer, or there's certain, it's kind of like that when it comes to consoles, outboard gear. It's more of, it's the way I want to work. It's not the way I need to work. It's just the way I prefer and want to work to get the result I want. It's kind of like, one other analogy. It's like I can take photos with my cell phone. And I can also take photos with my Canon or my Nikon DSLR pro level camera. But I will say this, and I'm going to say this, and there are going to be a lot of people that are just not going to understand. And I would say, sonically, to get a certain result, an end result, going this route with the console, with the outboard gear, using microphones, even if you record your stuff with virtual VST instruments, and you send all your outputs through a console, and you route and you use a patch bay and you patch in certain compressors and EQs, and you're using certain outboard reverb units and stuff like I do in this room. When you listen to the product, the best way I would say this is probably, I would say the best way I can use an analogy. If you know anything about photography, I'm going to use this analogy, and this is what the best way to describe it. Go do this experiment. This is a cheap way to experiment if you not like me, who's well equipped with this type of gear, and you really want to know what results would I get if I decided to go like me in this, where I'm going to have a console and all this outboard gear and these, expensive preamps that I got here, these high-end preamps and so forth. What results? Why? My best analogy was, you want to experiment, go take your iPhone or your Android, the camera, and what you bet, if you own this is on if you own it. If you don't, this is a cheap investment. It's a cheap but affordable if you want to do this. I'm going to use a photo as my analogy. Go out somewhere, take your significant other, or go out somewhere, take your cell phone, find a subject to shoot a photo of with your cell phone. But the object is not to stand, let's say the subject's 25 feet away, right? And now some people don't have the money to do this experiment. Let's say you're out on the lake or a river, and you want to capture part of the river with the subject in front of, with the river in the background, your subject, and so forth. Stand about 25 feet in front of your subject and shoot that person, or the subject. Could be a tree, a pole, or whatever, a sign. Shoot with your phone. And then do the same picture. Shoot it with I'll use here, the camera, like I have a 1DS Mark II Canon camera. My lens is a 70-200 lens. And what I'll do is I'll put it in manual mode because I'm outside. So I'm going to set my ISO down to about 100, no more than 200. I'm going to set my shutter speed probably, I don't know, at least 250, somewhere around in there. I'm going to, my f-stop probably anywhere f4 or whatever the case, or 2.8, whatever, you know, I might have it at 2.8. And I'm going to shoot the same subject at the same distance. I'm going to let the camera, I'm going to focus the camera, let it autofocus and so forth. You know, it's got 51 autofocus points and so forth. I'm going to set all my camera to take that same subject. Come back, compare the photos when I'm done. The photo from my camera, from my phone, and then the photo from using my camera. And I'm going to do this again using the photo analogy to get you to understand why this exists and why commercial studios choose this route. And I'm gonna let you hear it sonically as well. But you should A/B that test if you have a camera with a detachable lens. It don't even got to be a 7200. Just a DSLR. It could be something really cheap, or not really affordable. It could be a Canon T4 camera. You know, entry level DSLR with a, you know, maybe a, I don't know, 50mm lens, or it could be a variable lens, like something like 35 to 150mm or whatever camera, where you can adjust the focal length. And really look at the pictures, you know, from that camera. Upload those photos from your phone to your computer, and upload the camera, the same photos with your DSLR, or if you got a mirrorless, and A/B the pictures. The best way I can describe it is, will your phone camera pictures look bad? If you're a crappy photographer, it probably will. But if you're a decent photographer, you're gonna get some really nice shots with the phone. That is without question. The photos are gonna look nice. But when you A/B it, when you finally look at the photos that came out of your DSLR, you're gonna be like, okay, yes, I get it. Yeah, now I know why professional photographers prefer DSLR cameras, as an example. It's the same thing with shooting film. Can you shoot a movie with your iPhone or Android? Absolutely. But then you A/B the film footage from a phone, and then you look at something like a digital film camera, like a Red Epic Dragon, a Sony PWM, or it could be a Sony F5, or it could be a Blackmagic or Ursa Mini, one of those type of, you know, Canon C200 Mark II digital film cinema camera, something like that, and shoot the same. Even if you did a music video, shoot it with your phone and then shoot it with an actual digital film camera. Come back and do some post editing, and then compare the videos. Your phone, and then look at the actual digital cinema camera if you can afford one. There are a lot of those cameras now using the market anywhere from $300 to $500, $700 or whatever. But they're well worth the investment if you're going to start shooting music videos. I'm going to get into talk reason why you want to invest in, let's say you want to be a full-fledged production and you want to do more than just music. You also want to do videos. You also want to do photography and everything to include everything to make everything a complete artist bio. Let's say when you're doing production for artists, if you're not the artist yourself. Let's say investments like investing in cinema cameras, digital cameras, even if they are point and shoot cameras and not a DSLR. A point and shoot camera is just a simple, basic point and shoot. Something like a Nikon Coolpix or Canon, whatever the case. Those type of shooting cameras, or an actual DSLR, which will have removable lenses, or getting into video where you're going to use an actual digital cinema camera for video, you know, and having the lenses, and of course having the lighting. You want to have lighting, key lighting, backdrop lighting, because lighting is probably an underrated subject. But when you're done, when you start seeing where you have your camera, like I got flashes and strobes and backdrops for doing pro level photography. When you look at your subjects of, you know, that, you will understand why. It's the same thing with this. When you listen to a recording that was done through like my Antelope interface, through this Allen and Heath console, through high-end preamps and outboard gear, outboard compressors, more than just plugins in itself. And when you hear it, you'll say to yourself, oh, now I am trying to get an artist to come over here to record some tracks so you can hear. I don't want to, I did a Christmas album, but I don't want to use the Christmas because it's seasonal. Christmas music is seasonal. Even though I could play a snippet of it, but this type of video will be played all year round, so I don't want to use Christmas music. But I am trying to get an artist over here to record some music to let you hear the whole package of this, of why go this route. Now, to end the video, you do not have to go this route. And I'll be the first, just like anyone else, I'll say it again. You do not have to go this route. But this is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer. This is a common sense. If you want the sonic character of classic artists that was recorded, like I was using the Michael Jackson Thriller as an example, or it can be anyone from the 80s, 70s, 80s, maybe early 90s, when we were still using the console, tape machines, outboard gear. The only thing is analog audio interfaces, AD to DA converters have gotten really good, and recording into your DAW, Pro Tools, Reaper, Logic Pro, Cakewalk, whatever the case, Studio One. Recording if you want that sonic character, this is the only way to get it. Now, whether this is using the Allen Heath like this, or an SSL, or an Audient, or a Neve, or an API, those sonic characters between those consoles are minimal. They do sound different, but it's very minimal. They're not super distinguishable, if that makes sense. Unless you have a really trained ear, then you can distinguish a Neve from an SSL. But in the end, the overall recording process and mixing and so forth to get that type of sonic character that you heard from records made from the 90s, the 80s, the 70s. And I'm talking about if I even go 90s artists, I'll go Intro or Mary J. Blige or Cut Close or Tupac or Biggie Smalls or even if it's rock records, you know, Nirvana or you know, just bands, you know, it could have been Rolling Stones, whatever. Just remember, out of the thousands and thousands of artists, Madonna, Mariah Carey, Michael Jackson, Doobie Brothers, AC/DC, Def Leppard, and so forth. Of all these thousands of well-known artists, when they went into these recording studios, they all pretty much generally recorded, mixed, and mastered the exact same way. The equipment might have been a little different. I'm talking about studio monitors, maybe the console, the preamps, the microphones, the compressors, so forth. Some of that might have been different, but the process was generally the same process no matter what recording studio to get that sonic character. One, you had to do it that way. There's no limited options now because of so much software and plugins and what we can use. These are more modern software tools available just to change up some of the sonics. But to end the video, if you go back, even if you listen to the stuff on YouTube and just listen to classic, just go listen to Holiday, Madonna's Holiday, or go back and listen to Earth, Wind and Fire's In the Stone, or go back and listen to Something About You by Level 42, or just any, we're talking 90s, 80s, 70s, go back, even some early 80s, some early 2000s, even mid 2000s, you know, like 2010, where people are still going to a commercial studio, still going through a console, still going through preamps and so forth. If that's the goal of the sound you want your studio to sound like, this is the way that you have to go this route. It sucks because some people are like, well, I'm doing this in my bedroom. I don't want a console that big, an outboard air. Why can't I just use my DAW and plugins? And I am going to say this once again. No one is saying you can't. An awesome software like Harrison Mix Bus, like I got Harrison Mix Bus version 9, allows you to achieve those results as close as possible. But there's a big UT. But if you wanted an authentic sonic character that was created with, like I said, Madonna's Holiday or Mariah Carey's Vision of Love, Michael Jackson's, Thriller, and so forth. You want to go back to just all those classic rock bands or heavy metal bands or R&B bands or funk, or where they went to a recording studio, had to record it on 2-inch tape console. So that's the only way. It sucks because there are going to be some people that are going to defend that, no, I can do that with plugins. And it's easier to achieve with the plugins on the mixing process. We're talking about, but you cannot exclude the recording process. People always use the argument of mixing as a justification for I can do it in the box. Yes, you can when the product's finished recording, just using plugins. If the recording portion, what we call the front end, is done well. And I'm talking about to the point where if you want to use, bands, orchestras, and so forth. Now, this is a long video to a long answer, but it's the same thing with me and this microphone. The reason why my vocals sound so much better in my videos, as an example, the reason why the vocals sound better when I'm making recording is because I included a mixing console it has a preamp in here, and I'm using an actual condenser mic, this microphone right here. I'm using this Behringer B1 microphone instead of using the microphone from the camcorder or using the microphone built into an actual DSLR or point and shoot camera. This is the reason why the vocals sound a lot better in the video. That's one example as to the whole entire how do I make my stuff sound better. Now, am I telling you go out and run out and buy a large format analog console? And no. But I'm just saying, if you want to achieve that, if that's the sonic character goal that you're going for all these artists I've listened to for over the 78 Night, Earth, Wind and Fire, and so forth, the reason why they sound the way they did is because of how they recorded and mixed the way they did with the equipment they did that way. And that's why. Now, to sum up the video, because it's going on 40 minutes, if your goal is just to make music and you want to just use your plugins, your virtual instruments, and you're just going to use plugins and software, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And it will sound fine if you do the recording process fine, using those tools. But if you want that sonic character from those classics, then you have to go this route. Other than that, that's going to do it. I know it's a long video to a simple answer, but that's the best way I can describe it. Other than that, y'all have a great one, and we'll see you in the next one when I make another one. Other than that, y'all have a great one.